morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Connect conference. I think it's our 8th or our 9th. We skipped a year, so I'm forgetting the number. We'll round it up to 10. But I am so excited to have you at our Higher Education Summit. My name is Todd Zipper. I am the co-president of what we call Wiley Education Services and the Learning House. We're working on that name. We call it West 2.0 here, those that work for us. But this is my favorite time of year. We call it kind of the Super Bowl for us, or Christmas in June. And it's really an amazing time where we get to, accomplish a few critical things. The first is learning, right? We're all educators at heart. And so when you're here, this is about learning. This is about figuring out ways to apply lessons and new ideas back into your institutions. The second thing is to focus on the relationships, right? Our business is about partnering with universities, building those relationships, so enhancing existing ones and getting new ones. And the third thing, and I think this is going to be a great segue to our speaker, is inspiration, right? It's very easy to kind of get into rut in different ways. You might have great ideas, but at the end of the day, people really respond to inspiration and leadership. And that's what this team and this group of people here are today, whether you work for Wes or you work for one of your universities that are out there. So we are so excited to have you. It's very similar format that we've had throughout the years, but it changes, of course, and in terms of responding to the latest trends, new speakers. So hopefully there will be a lot that will be familiar, and there will be some things that are different. But for many of you that have not been to our conference, especially the new universities that came from the Wiley side of the house, welcome to you all and to my new colleagues there. So this room has gotten a little bigger, but which is great, but it also feels very much the same. So let me just make sure this is working. I don't know if it is. I probably should have tested it. All right. Maybe somebody can help me with this, but I'll guess on what the next slide is. So this is not working, so it's good. This is where we get the kinks out as everyone works here. So I wanted to, here we go. I wanted to, this is still not working, but we got through one thing. All right. The theme of the conference is go beyond. So what does that mean, right? And you're seeing some things that look outer space here, and if you've checked out the agenda, we wanted to celebrate and make an analogy to the lunar landing of 50 years ago. This year is the 50th anniversary, and there's been a great movie out, First Man, that hopefully you all have seen. And it's really an inspirational time and something that we want to bring to what we're thinking about in higher education. So if somebody can help me with this is still not working. So for us, if you think about it, 1961, President Kennedy said, they were faced with some real existential issues, right? As we all know, in the Cold War. And they said, we're gonna land. Kennedy said, we're gonna land a human being on the moon in a very short period of time. 8 years later, 2 astronauts are walking on the moon. Unbelievable, impossible to think that could even happen. And so when you think about the analogy to where we are today, do we have a moonshot in us, right? And that's, I think, this couple days are not just going to be about moonshots. They're going to be about a lot of best practices, a lot of things that we can do to help improve our institutions. But if you really think about it, the advent of technology has disrupted so many industries. I don't think and this is a personal opinion, I don't think it's really disrupted higher education. I've been involved in online education since 2004. I've seen incredible innovations. I've seen a lot of great growth and a lot of people get access to education that could not have. But I don't think we've really changed the game where I think we can change the game. And so the question is there a moonshot in us? Can we lower tuition by 25 or 50%? Can we graduate 2 times as many students? Can we fill the job skills gap, which I'll talk about in a little bit later, in ways that we are not ultimately doing today? So, at the end of the day, it took maybe a very inspirational president and a country completely aligned on a mission to do what they did 50 years ago. But we have a small group of people here, but it's a powerful group of people. And can we align to maybe create our own set of moonshots? There are examples of those innovations that are out there today that are doing some of that. The example, we had a speaker from Georgia Tech, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, talk about their $7,000 Masters of Computer Science program, that if you go to a like institution at, like, let's say Columbia University, it's 10 times that for the same Masters of Computer Science degree. So with that, hopefully this is working. It is now. Awesome. Thank you, guys. I love how magic just happens in technology. I want to introduce my partner in building this business we call West 2.0. And Matt Hillman is also the co-president. I'm going to save you the long title. But Matt and I have had this incredible journey over the last 7 months of bringing these two businesses together. And I'm very proud to work side by side with him and the leadership team that he brings to bear. Matt is going to walk you through a little bit more about Wiley. Some of you on the Learning House side, existing client, colleague, is probably wondering, what is this merger looking like, and what is the larger mission of Wiley, and how does it all fit in? Matt's going to walk you through that. After he does that, I'm going to come back on one stage, as I like to do every year, just kind of give you some major trends that we're seeing in the higher education market today to kind of dock into, as you're going to hear about a lot of these in the coming day and a half, so you have some context. And then finally, we'll just kind of give a little bit of an agenda for the rest of the show, and then we'll bring Leland up on stage. So with that, Matt, can you introduce yourself? Matt Hillman, and come on stage with me. I'm going to, this will give you. Okay.
All right. Now that Todd's got all the kinks out of the technology, no, I really appreciate the welcome. It's amazing. I got to attend the Partner Symposium in the fall, and I'm always up for a day at the Downs. But I was really looking forward to, when we got out of a symposium, learning about Connect, and this being our first opportunity with over 60 partners representing 600 plus degree programs in this room. And so really proud to be here. A little bit on my end, I'm coming into my 16th year with the business, and as many times as I reflect on my 16 years, I put it in the context of the Wiley story. So Wiley is a company that has been around for 212 years. So it makes me feel much younger in my tenure, in my role. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wiley organization, because I think it's important to understand what we're going to see over the next day and a half to understand the connection to why we were so interested in bringing the Learning House into the Wiley family. So at the highest level, Wiley operates out of 2 business units, but fundamentally, we are dedicated to driving the development, dissemination, and application of knowledge. That's what we wake up and think about every single day. For the last 200 plus years, we're going to think about it for the next 200 years. But if you think about a business that's been around that long, change has been an inevitable component of what we have navigated, whether that's building one of the largest scholarly research publishing businesses in the world, whether you're on the education side of our business and you know us for the Dummies brand, or you've used an accounting textbook and you've experienced Wiley. But at the end of the day, what we in the Wiley business are focused on are those relationships at the bottom. So for us, every day we are getting up and thinking about, how do we make connections between researchers, learners, universities, and corporations? So even this morning, having breakfast with a set of leaders this morning, we were talking about all 4 categories here. And so I hope it gives you some comfort for our our friends that are coming through the Learning House relationships, that we're in a business that lives and breathes this. We have a long legacy. And I would like to acknowledge, so that you can all, throughout the conference, we're in the 7th generation of the family being involved in the business. So our board chair is here today, Jesse Wiley. If you're here, that's Jesse. Jesse will be handing out free ice water in the lobby after we're done this session. So, but really happy to have Jesse here. It really shows a commitment by the family and the Wiley organization that Jesse's here. Brian Napak will join us a little later this morning. But I wanted to make sure that folks got an understanding of what is it that drives us at Wiley, and hopefully you can start to see the connection, whether you've come through the Wiley Education Services or the Learning House. We're smack dab in the middle of what Wiley's all about. So what do? I just said, you know, we have over 60 partners as a combined organization now, 50,000 plus graduates. That number is already outdated because we've just graduated a large cohort this summer. Over 5,000 courses and 800 programs, because it includes degree and non-degree. And so the breadth and depth of experience in the room, what I'm looking forward to most is learning from others in the room and getting to connect and understand, you know, what are you hearing in your market? What is it that's working over here? What isn't working? You know, we have to be honest and open to change here, but the combined power of our network is pretty impressive. And I hope in the next day and a half that you take a step out of your comfort zone and introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know, and get a chance to meet someone at another university or Wiley or Learning House and make a new connection. As I said, we're now supporting over 33,000 students as a combined business, and this year pacing to graduate over 12,000 students. So for us, that's what we get up and think about every single day, is how do we get 11,665 to be 11,666 and keep it going? Because for us, meeting those outcomes, that's why we're in this business, and that's what excites us to be partners with you. So as Todd said, it's been an incredible 7 months. Right or wrong, I was the guy that got to lead the due diligence to bring Learning House into the Wiley family. And I would tell you, it's one of the most, it's one of my most proud moments, because the culture between Wiley and Learning House, it is eerie because it's so similar. Sometimes I keep pinching myself that this is too good to be true. It's just true. I think we've got enough time now to just say it's true. So could not be more thrilled to be here, welcome you on behalf of Wiley, and look forward to learning with you throughout the day. So I'm gonna hand it back over to Todd, and look forward to seeing you out in the hallways and at the breakouts.
Thank you, Matt. That was great. So I'm going to walk you all through some trends and observations in higher ed. Not a comprehensive list by any measure. There's 9 that I'm going to be talking about. It's just important for you to lock into some of these as we think about our moonshots and we think about what we can do to change the game at our universities and together. So the first one is, to start on a little somber note, this continues. The closures and consolidations continue in our space. Over 20 the last 2 years. We're pacing for over that probably in 2019. And this isn't not-for-profits, publics, and privates in 2020 and beyond. Just based on some announcements, it looks like that will continue. And it's not like new universities are really coming on board. This is not quite the prediction of Clayton Christensen, but the idea here is that higher education is under attack in a lot of ways. The business model is. And so you're going to see more of that. And I think it's very important that our institutions, position themselves to be on the kind of the winning side of this equation. Simply put, regulations are outdated. So it's unlikely, unless somebody wants to make a $1 bet with me that I'll take the other side of this trade, that we're going to see any kind of reauthorization of higher education in this presidential cycle. It's going to have to wait to the next one. There's certainly a lot of discussion about it. And that means we're going to have to wait for very important innovations that have to happen in the authorization. Things like the credit hour being tied to time. Things like competency-based education. So we're going to have to wait a couple years on that at least. FERPA was developed in 2001 with the Patriot Act. So when you think about privacy and how important it is in our society today, the smartphone, social media did not exist when FERPA came out. So we're really in an outdated mode right now. And if higher education wants to innovate and wants to be kind of ahead of the trends, we need to do some updating on this front. So all of us need to come together to kind of push Congress to really make that happen. But it's just a precarious state that we're in right now. So we keep talking about things in traditional versus non-traditional. The simple fact is the non-traditional is really the traditional. And the more, and I think the schools in this room are making the changes, but we have to position our universities to service the non-traditional. I was just with one of our universities yesterday talking about financial aid and then borrow-based period and what needs to happen there. It's imperative that we focus the institution on solving for what we call the non-traditional learner, but essentially they are the traditional learner in a lot of respects. Mitch Daniel came out when they acquired Kaplan, talking about how the 18-year-old, that is going to continue to decline, that population, especially in certain parts of the country where a lot of universities are, over the coming decade. And the Great Recession did not help because people started having less children. But then there are other populations, like our online college student survey about the Hispanic population is underserved online, and it's a population we should figure out how to serve better. Simply put, we are shifting more towards what the general population is in terms of it. When I started off from a male-female perspective, when I started off in 2004, it was well north of 70% female versus male online. It was a lot of these stalwart degrees like the RN to BSN. Teaching was huge at the master's level. We're getting kind of a reversion to the mean. So you're seeing at the undergraduate level 60-40 now, and the graduate level even a little bit more balanced. So just however you want to wrap your head around that, it's just a trend that we're seeing. And again, it's becoming much more mainstream is another way to think about it. So this is a little bit of an eerie slide, but I don't think you should think too much into it. But big tech is taking over a lot of things, right? Amazon buying Whole Foods. I mean, we can think about so many different analogies here. Like, are they going to take over higher education, right? They have so much money. They're so massive. These companies are approaching $1 trillion in market capitalization. But the simple fact is their needs are so great from a skill set standpoint that, for example, AWS or Google Cloud, they're essentially skipping over higher ed and creating their own certificates, even alongside university certificates and badges on, let's say, MOOC platforms. So this is something to just kind of be aware of, and where universities can partner with these institutions. It's certainly not binary in our perspective. One of our institutions here, George Mason, is located in Amazon's second headquarters, right? They're going to need all the talent they can get and more, right? So it's not something that they're certainly going to do on their own, but it is a trend that they're going to take matters into their own hands as much as they can, because that's how these institutions are built. So 3 takeaways from our online college student survey I want to talk about. So I guess I said it was going to be 9 observations. Maybe there's 11 if you add it up this way. Traditionally, online has been looked at as, oh, people come to your program, they leave, and then they're done. They're not looked at as more that we're a connection to that university, more coursework. What OCS found is that alumni want to engage with their host institution. And whether that's in the form of additional coursework, I think it was 40% said we want to continue and do more coursework. And this is going to be a theme I'm going to be talking about in the next few slides with that institution. Even 13% said they want to donate and become part of that process. The second trend is that this is our 8th year doing OCS. And when we did it 8 years ago, 44% of online students were studying within 100 miles of their host institution, where their home is. Now that 44%, that exact number, is within 50 miles. What does that tell you? Online is becoming more like traditional higher ed in terms of becoming hyper-local in its nature. There's still obviously regional, and certain brands translate in other ways, but that's something to think about. And there's a lot more competition, ultimately. The third thing, which should be no secret, is that STEM programs are on the rise. The stalwarts of business and education and nursing are flat to even down in some cases. So even though those programs are pretty massive still, they're losing share to STEM. And so that's, in a kind of a good way, provides lots of opportunity for us in this room to skate to where that puck is going to be. So the Business Higher Education Forum, there's a lot going on in this slide, and this could be its own hour-long session here. But I'm going to let you digest this wheel of skills, foundational skills, for a second. The Business Higher Education Forum commissioned Burning Glass last year to do essentially a survey on skills in the market. They went back to 2007, looked at 150 million job postings, and they discovered that there were these 14 critical skills for the digital economy that are grouped in 3 areas of human skills, which you kind of think of more of like soft skills, digital building block skills, which are thought of more of as technical skills, and business enabler skills that are basically business enabler skills. Each of these have a spectrum of kind of don't exist to expert. It's important to note that these skills are needed pretty much in all jobs, right? And not necessarily in very technical fields. It shouldn't be looked at as, when you think about the digital economy, as a certain subsector of skills. Even today, if you take, for instance, in sales, you got to know how to use Salesforce.com, right? And HubSpot and tools like that. I wanted to read a couple of statistics, if I can pull them out, which I just thought were really interesting. Employers and job seekers appear to place very different value on these skills, at least based on the signals they send. While 78% claim at least one new foundational skill, only a minority of the millions of resumes studied claim 3 or more of these skills. Even the 3 most frequently claimed skills, business process, communication, and critical thinking, are cited barely a quarter of the sample. Only 1 in 4 job seekers claim none of these skills. It is not clear whether job seekers do not possess these skills or simply fail to signal them, but either way, this mismatch between the skills signaled by job seekers and the skill requirements signaled by employers strongly suggests that opportunities are being missed. So really, what does this mean is our university is going to position themselves for the 21st century, right? This is it. This is it right here. And so building the courses, building the curriculum, building the degrees towards this. This is not a dream. This is a reality of job postings from the last 150 years. So when us as employers think about the massive, oftentimes, gap in a skill set and what the job is, to me, I actually am incredibly motivated by this, that there is a tremendous opportunity for higher education to fill this gap, because employers aren't going to do this themselves, and students aren't going to go into YouTube and Wikipedia and other places to find these skills. So I think that despite people often citing in the media this existential crisis of higher ed, I think the opportunity is as big as ever for our collective industry. In what form or fashion that education happens, that's what we need to invent together. So kind of in a similar vein, how do we go from this kind of T-shape type of student, right, where they, in their early 20s, get a base set of knowledge, get a skill set, and then they're done, right? And then they work for 30 or 40 years, learn a little bit, kind of stay in a similar track of career, stay in their zone, their lane, and that's that. To more of this M shape, right? Where they get this base knowledge, but they're constantly coming back to get reskilled and upskilled along the process. And it's an expected set of education that they do as an individual and as the employer as well. And that's why the university, to make this happen, not only needs to be focused on the student, but also the employer as well, so they can kind of hit these skills along the way for that individual. Doing good on time here. So in a similar vein, the 60-year curriculum is this idea that the next generation of teenagers are expected to live to 80 or 90, to work well past 65 years. So you're talking about students that are going to have not just 4 or 5 jobs, but 4 or 5 at least careers, completely new skill sets along the way. So how do we really offer the product and service that meet them on that journey? How do we tailor those solutions to them? How do we really think of ourselves? How do we build the technology? For example, a student graduates from your institution. Are you really connected with them, except maybe you get, like I just got a letter from my alma mater saying, is this still your home address? Is this still your email address, right? So they can basically send me capital campaigns to donate to them. How do we think of them as a lifelong customer? And that's where I think that institutions of the future, you can, and even just thinking from a business perspective, you can extend that lifetime value that they bring. So you can, you could add more cost to the system then at that point to acquire more customers and build more product for them. So I think it's really also thinking about the employer market, right? If you as an institution, many of you have been around for decades, if not centuries. A lot of the employers, we just talked about one of them, has been around for a couple centuries. How do you build a long-term partnership with that employer and ultimately those students and the employees in that employer, and kind of keep rotating them in and out of your institution back into the employer and create this virtuous cycle? So we think of the future, the universities that are going to win are going to really focus on more of that 60-year curriculum. And it's tough. It's tough to reinvent yourself while the ship is kind of moving along the way. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's why hopefully you have partners like us to help make that happen. So that's really the major trends that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I think you're going to be hearing a lot about that in the coming day and a half. So now I'm going to switch gears, just go through a couple logistics here, whet your appetite a little bit on getting the most out of this summit. So our first speaker is going to be Leland Melvin. You're going to hear from him in a few minutes. We are thrilled to have him. I couldn't think of a better segue, and when you see him, you'll even just visually, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, from this theme of the moonshot, of going beyond, of thinking about ways to disrupt higher education for all of society. And somebody that has that kind of perspective, has seen Earth as, from that far away, I think can really, really help us think that through. Betty Van de Bosch is really part of this incredible experiment. Experiment maybe is not the right word, but Kaplan selling to Purdue University about a year and a half ago, 30-something thousand university, and this really what I think is a pretty amazing public kind of private partnership. And we're going to get an update on that. We're certainly going to hear about a lot of the themes we just talked about in terms of serving the non-traditional learner. And then Chris Field, an author and speaker, Disrupting for Good, incredibly motivational and right in the theme of what we all need to do here around disruption. So just some thoughts around the general session and tracks. We have our very own Dave Kleinfelter, who's back with us today, and Carol Aslanian, who've done this every year, are going to give their update on OCS. I gave you a little bit of nuggets on it, but as always, it really delivers a lot of punch around where the trends are going in online education and what does that mean for you as an institution in programs, in marketing, in product development, and everything in between. I think there's a lot of great takeaways there. There's going to be a fireside chat with our very own, our CEO, Brian Napak, who's here today, and Michael Feldstein, who runs the Illiterate blog and really on top of the trends, and also thinks a lot about the online program management movement, which is the sort of the industry that we're in, although we don't love the name per se, because we do more than OPM, but they'll be talking about that. And then just kind of we have a couple of sessions where you're going to have, the only choice you're going to ultimately have to make the next day and a half is which session to go to, and because we think all of them are incredible, and that's the purpose why we put them on the agenda. But we're going to have, we call it small steps and giant leaps. Neither one is better than the other, but both are very important. Outside, we have, if you feel so inclined, to give a testimonial on Connect later on. And we also have a booth on Wiley, just to give even more perspective. And Matt did a great job kind of telling you a little about Wiley, but it is incredible how deep Wiley goes in education and in research and all the things they're involved in, and it's really an honor to be part of them. And then finally tonight, we have a reception, which is a great way to just relax, have a drink, and get to collaborate and meet others and talk about the day. So with that, I don't really have much else to say. Do you know if Melvin's here? I don't think I see him yet, but maybe he's listening in the green room. If not, we could take a 5-minute break. Betty, do you know if Melvin's in yet? It's okay. Like an astronaut, we're going to kind of bring him in a very sort of focused way with lots of cameras going off and dramatic entrance. So I'll wait to give the opening remarks. But we wanted to make the segue to the moonshot that we're hoping to solve for a little bit in the next day and a half, and Melvin's speech. So with that, thank you all. I'm going to come back on stage to introduce Melvin in a couple minutes. Thanks.